All right, so I have my palette again all set up, an assortment of brushes. In this session, I'm going to use flat brush like this. I think this is a 3/4, and we have a half, and then a couple of rounds of varying sizes. Nothing real fancy, but what I want to do is just add more contrast to this and really develop the skin tones in the face in this particular session. But in the glazing technique, we work everything as a whole. So nothing really stays white. We work everything together and keep on developing the overall contrast and the overall tone of the image. So I think what I'm going to do is get into the face a little bit. I want to darken that. That seems to be probably the portion that looks the least done to me right now. And so I'm going to take a mixture here of burnt sienna and a little bit of matte medium. We'll thin that out. And just a bit of white to add a little bit of opacity to it so it's not too rough. And then I'm just going to thin it out and blend in. We're going to block some of those colors in the cheek area. And then we'll work our way down and a little bit underneath the lip area. I want to leave that spot free for now. And then on the chin and a little bit into his neck. We need to darken the overall value of it. Feather this out just a bit here on the top by his cheek. And we'll need to darken this more in some of the future layers, but that'll work for now. I'm also going to use the same color over the shadow side and just warm that up a little bit. And just a tiny bit for this area. Now, similar color for the hand area. Now, burnt sienna and titanium white do make a really nice flesh tone, but it doesn't cover the whole gamut of different flesh tones that you can have, all the possibilities. There's many different nuances, and we want to make sure that we capture them, so it's not a one-size-fits-all flesh tone recipe, but we can definitely get into the neighborhood with some of these different colors. All right, now what I want to do is fill in the ear a bit. I'm going to take some Naphthol Crimson, and I'm just going to work it into this existing flesh tone color, which was burnt sienna and titanium white, and then matte medium to thin it out a little bit. So what I'll do is just fill this in, and it does take a few layers to get this to come alive and look how it ought to look. So we don't want to get impatient with the process, but just take our time and do what needs to be done. I also want to fill in the lips a little bit more. Just get that pinkish tone established. His lips do tend to look a little pinker than well, they just tend to look a little pinker than the rest of the face, which makes sense, of course. Also, the cheeks are a little pinker in tone, and the ears are way, way pinker in tone than the other parts of the face. All right, and now that I've done that, I'm going to continue to work in some other areas. I want to continue to darken some of the other parts of the picture so that we know kind of what we're up against, getting the darkest value really established. And then that'll help to determine how much to darken the rest. So, put down some fresh matte medium so that I know it's free of other pigments. And using ultramarine blue, I'm going to go in and mix that with some raw umber dark to tone that down a bit. See that nice mixture here. Just swirl that in your brush. And then we'll use this on the dog's fur. Really get that nice and dark. Into the background a little bit because we see that the value there is pretty dark, and it's about the same value as the fur of the dog as well. Now, work this also into the dog's fur on its face and get that established. And some shadows on the top. And then we'll get some shadows within this part of the ear as well. There we go. Let's also darken behind the boy's head using that same mixture. And we just push the paint into the texture of the canvas quite a bit to begin with, but then after we get that established, we even out the strokes. And that's the way to really get it smooth with the glazing technique. Diagonal strokes, kind of just fan it right across the surface really lightly. Dry brush it out, and that's how you can get some gradients established. Tell you what, let's add a little more raw umber dark here. And then we'll fill in this area by his nose. And then also this nice little area within the mouth. All right. I'm taking my smaller round brush, I'm going to dip right into the raw umber dark, mix into this area, add a little bit of ultramarine blue, and then what I'd like to do is darken some of the shadows underneath the boy's chin. Like so. And also on this side as well. And just see if there's any other places we can utilize this color. Maybe right in here. And also in this spot and this spot. I'm just going to darken these wrinkles of the clothing. And then I'm going to add a little bit of burnt sienna to the mix. And then I want to darken some of these wrinkles coming from his head. And I tell you what, let's take this flat edge brush here, clean it off really quickly, and then let's use that to kind of blend this out a little better. Get some gradients there. Suggestion of a little bit of randomness. It's always a good thing. And we just kind of fan it out, just dry brush it out. That's a great way to get a gradient when you don't have to worry about things being absolutely super smooth. Now, if we were doing this on his face with the flesh tones, then you might have to get it a little smoother, in which case you wouldn't want to use the dry brushing technique, but you might want to use wet on wet or a dilution glaze or something like that. And that's where you just take the pigment and you mix clear medium into it to thin out the ratio of pigment to the medium. And that gets you a gradient as well. But this will work for what we're doing here. Let's add one more little wrinkle there. One that's just a bit lighter and softer. And we'll let that dry. But in the meantime, I think I'd like to darken this area. It does need to get darker for sure. That's in shadow, so I've got to make it look like it is in fact in shadow. All right. Now what we'll want to do is go back and blend a little bit more on these flesh tones in the hand. I'm going to take a little bit of raw sienna here so I can get a warmer color on the top. Because it's in highlight, it tends to work better when you use a warmer color for that. Mix into what I previously used before, and I want to just darken this a little bit with that raw sienna. Just blend in a little bit more. Now let's add a bit more to that, more color. Okay. Excuse me. Okay, and what I'll do is darken the face a little bit more. See if we can't add some more of this flesh tone that we have. So, burnt sienna. use some of that. And in this area, just a little bit of raw umber dark, so it's not too intense. We'll just fill this right in. Going to darken in down in here. And this is still just kind of the preliminary shading for everything. Let's get a little gradient on the nose. That is definitely needed, and that's really been neglected. So I'm going to cut across here with some strokes going horizontally. That's all I want to do, is just establish the thickness of the nose. If the color's off, that's okay. I can adjust that later, but for now I just need to get that thickness of the nose in there. A little more warmth overall. Okay, and that will do it for this step in the process, and I will meet you in the next step.